Hey, it's me, Zikri Khalil, all the way from Malaysia, truly Asia, your only host of this show where everything matters. Called It Matters. Another way of us trying to come up with a new format of giving talks, hence the initial IT, which stands for Incitement Talks, and the word matters because this is what we all talk about all the time. So for those who just joined us, welcome. This is not just discussing with all the NGO leaders, but we cover as many people as possible that would give tremendous insights on how we could move forward together for humanity, for Mother Nature, and for all things that are good. So today, I have the honor, actually, to invite somebody all the way from United States of America, who resides in Philly. And it's going to be one of those segments where I'm at night, she's there in the morning, and she represents a company, and I believe she even has a book, and I'm sure she will correct me if I'm wrong on this. A book focus on and what she does best. So I don't want to waste any more time. Here it is. Bring it up for Natalie Nixon from Figure 8 Thinking. How are you?
Hi, Zikri. It's good to see you. Thank you so much for having me, and good evening to you. I'm excited about our conversation.
Oh, thank you, thank you so much for agreeing and being part of the show. Where I'm definitely stoked to sort of get to know you a bit more, and hopefully the audience can learn along the way on the work that you do. And my mission in the show, Natalie, is to help our friends who are watching to understand the work that you do and why does it really matter, even though it doesn't really impact them. So I guess we can start off by saying, tell us a bit of your story and what you're doing right now, and why are you doing it?
Well, I tend to frame my story in terms of having a very loopy background. I have a background in cultural anthropology and fashion. And I always say that my background in fashion gave me a deep appreciation for business acumen, technology, logistics, but also the role of beauty and aesthetics and desire and building consumer insight, which sometimes I think a lot of businesses and sectors forget about. They forget that at the end of the day, they're selling to humans who are driven by these very inconsistent, irrational drivers. So fashion has really equipped me with an incredible opportunity and lens for observation, but that also is what cultural anthropology gave me, because anthropologists are really good at understanding society from what I call the worm's eye view, going really deep into smaller, discrete units of society, economics, sociology, political science. They give us the bird's eye view, which is also important, but that is a distinctive tool and skill set that I bring to my work. I was an academic for 16 years. I was a professor where I first taught the business of fashion. And then I founded and launched the Strategic Design MBA for Thomas Jefferson University. And this was an MBA that integrated design thinking and to help people learn strategy and leadership and branding and finance. In the middle of that, I created what I called at the time my side hustle, which was Figure 8 Thinking. And I started Figure 8 Thinking after giving a TEDx talk where I was proclaiming that the future of work is jazz, and that if we really want to get more innovative, we have to work more improvisationally. And that led to invitations into companies to give talks, to facilitate, to consult. And my husband wisely said to me, you know what, this is a real thing, you should formalize it. And so that's why I created Figure 8 Thinking. A year after creating, I realized I was having more fun with those projects. And so after a bit of soul searching, I decided to leave academia, and I have not looked back. And I've been building my company for 4 years and really enjoying the work. And so what I do at Figure 8 Thinking is I'm a creativity strategist, and I advise leaders on transformation, specifically through the lens of creativity and foresight. I'm also an author, which you kindly referenced. I have a book out called The Creativity Leap, and I'm a global speaker.
Wow. I mean, I'm not making this up, but I'm having a bit of goosebumps here because you're covering all the spectrum that I couldn't believe my eyes. I mean, based on the word that you have started off, I mean, I'm trying to touch a bit more on the topic of creativity, and as we are living in a very challenging times of in the historic of humanity. Where do you think, if I may call you an expert, where do you think we lack in adding more creative solutions in this spectrum of issues globally? And let's not even talk about the pandemic. Let's talk about what's directly impacted communities from the pandemic itself. I mean, I'll give you a bit of a scenario in Malaysia, just so that you can see the differences. Over here, we've been in a partial lockdown for a year and a half. We have, lots of jobs. That's a common problem. But for the first time in our nation, we're starting to have people who are killing themselves in the numbers daily, more than you can ever imagine. For those who are coming from a very conservative belief, because this is a Muslim country, 67% are Muslim. So it's very unheard of to hear Muslims killing themselves. So now we have this new problem, along with all kinds of issues from divorce rate and so forth. So people are blaming game. They can blame anyone. They blame here, blame there, and we're stuck with this vacuum of issues. So I mean, where do you think? Where can we do more here with where we lack with creativity-ness?
Well, thank you for sharing that really disturbing statistic. I'm really sorry to hear that. And what you've just shared is an example of the human toll that isolation sparks, that isolation kind of breeds for us. I always say that to be human is to be hardwired to be creative. And we only need to look at our own children or think back to our own childhoods about how we could do something with nothing, how we used our imagination constantly, how, especially when I was growing up, if my mother would send us outside to play, and if we came back inside and said, "I'm bored," she would say, "Only boring people get bored." So quickly we were like, no, I'm not boring. So we figured something out fun to do. But the key here is that I have a sister, we had some friends. So that human connection sparked what I call that stickiness and that complementarianess, right? Where things that I was good at, I could share and contribute. I have a very different type of beautiful brain than my sister does, than our friends did. And so it created what Hirschberg, who is the former head of design at Nissan, the car company, he created a term called creative abrasion, where he would purposefully put together people from different skills, different departments on any design challenge at Nissan. He would make sure there were people from HR and finance and sales and manufacturing, because he understood that friction that results when, oh no, I have to work with someone who's a different department from me. Now I have to explain the way we do things. Yes, it's hard in the beginning, but ultimately that friction is energy. So why not convert that energy into something positive? And so right now we are living in a time where creativity is an imperative. We will only identify new ways to create our next normal, because it's not going back to the old normal, but whatever the next normal is, we're only going to design new iterations of a future state through what I call the 3 I's. But before I get into the 3 I's, I do want to share how I define creativity. I think that creativity is our ability to toggle between wonder and rigor to solve problems. And sometimes people think that creativity is only something that artists do or only something that designers do. But I know that to not be true, because to be the best engineer, the best scientist, the best farmer, the best plumber, you must be incredibly creative. And you'll understand that, especially if you realize that, yes, the best electricians, plumbers, farmers, teachers, engineers are toggling between wonder and rigor to solve problems. And wonder is about deep curiosity, blue sky thinking, asking what if questions, being audacious. It's about dreaming, and it's about pausing as well, and awe. The rigor is also important in creativity. So rigor is about discipline, focus, time on task. And it's important to remember that we need wonder and rigor, because creativity is not doing whatever you feel like. It's not, right? We have rules, we have boundaries, and we need to know those so we can stretch up against them. And something like the pandemic has created an incredible amount of constraints, which can be so frustrating, which can make us feel like we're drowning sometimes. And on the other hand, creativity loves constraints. The best, most innovative problem solving has come through limited financial resources, limited amounts of time, limited amounts of people talent. It's those constraints which actually cause the wonder and the rigor to percolate and to create something really essential. And then just to sum it up, when I said that the 3 I's are really important here, in my book, The Creativity Leap, I talk about how we need wonder and rigor to solve problems, and that's creativity, but that we can't stop there. How do you exercise toggling between wonder and rigor on a consistent basis? You need these 3 I's, which are inquiry or curiosity, improvisation, which is about being adaptive, experimental, saying yes and not, yeah, well, we tried that already 5 years ago and it didn't work, or flat out no. No, improvisation is all about the build. There's no such thing as mistakes in something like jazz improvisation or rap music improvisation or comedic improv. It's always about what's the next offer that you're building on. And then the 3rd I is intuition. And intuition is about leading with the heart. It's what I call pattern recognition. Sometimes I call intuition brain feelings. And we don't teach intuition, or we don't teach how to be attuned to our intuition in business school or medical school or law school. However, every successful leader I've ever met, interviewed, worked with, relies on their intuition for strategic decision making. So those are the 3 I's: inquiry, improvisation, and intuition.
Intuition. Okay, got it. I mean, they're not that difficult to learn these things. I think you broke it down quite easily for me to understand and comprehend on how to apply these things. I mean, it's not a cliche anymore when people say you're thinking outside the box, because I think we should be doing that for a very long time. Would you mind giving some real life examples in this case of the 3 I's on any creative solutions that is being used in a constrained situation or in business, something that the audience can somewhat grasp the notion?
Yes. So when we talk about I'm sorry, I just got distracted for a moment. When we talk about inquiry, for example, what if we had more leaders who led with questions, who ensured that not only are they encouraging their team members to ask questions, which can be intimidating, right? Because it's one thing to say, oh, I welcome your questions, but we all have had experiences, myself included, where we have experienced what I call question shaming, right? Where we've been in situations where we raised our hand, we asked a question, and the response wasn't encouraging. The response wasn't positive. And so over time, that can lead us to not asking more questions, but questions are fundamental to new ideas, discovery, and exploration. So for leaders to begin to encourage questions also means that they have to be a bit vulnerable, and they have to share questions that they are having about their own process, about their own choices. They need to pause. This is the wonder piece, and share. I've been thinking about this marketing plan we've just launched, and now I'm beginning to realize that we probably need to make some changes. I started asking myself, is this the best way to go about it? Who else should be involved in this process? Who else could we ask for help? So just by a leader beginning to be more transparent and vulnerable and sharing questions that they have about the process really encourages questions amongst their team. And a tactical thing that you could do, I know that we're not all in the office yet. So if there is a way through an anonymous Google Forms or type form to invite questions, people don't have to leave their names, but inviting people to ask questions about a certain topic or challenge or opportunity that the organization is looking at. So that's an example. Sorry, and I want to add to that. And then you could randomly pick questions that would be the topic of a weekly meeting or twice a month meeting, right? And slowly but surely, you are building a culture that really does encourage and embrace questions and curiosity. Another way that I think about starting to build in more wonder, more rigor, actually, as an example that we saw coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So something like the restaurant, food and beverage industry, and I'll speak specifically in the United States, but I think it probably was hurt globally, but definitely in the United States, so many restaurants, people who worked in the service industry lost their jobs, lost their companies. And one of the things that we started seeing happening was the emergence of ghost kitchens. Now, this is interesting because ghost kitchens wasn't something that was a thing a year ago, right? But think about what needed to happen. We needed the constraint on people aren't coming to restaurants, right? Because of the quarantine. But we still need to figure out what's a creative way we could still design a menu. And we have the technology of digital delivery apps, right? And we have these group commissary, these commercial kitchens where, excuse me, chefs can lease space and they can actually now prototype new recipes, new menus that are only available through this delivery service. So that's an example of some wonder and some rigor that came about in a very real time way during the past 12 months.
Now, those are really, really good examples for our viewers out there to understand, on different spectrum of applying these creative-based solutions, I would call it. I love the way how you say that creativity loves constraints. It makes it so simple for people to understand when to be creative, and because like you said, there are certain rules. You can't just simply bring it up and bring it on. You know what I mean? But of course, there'll always be the naysayers, the ones who are, in the case of pandemic, in this case, like there are certain things where we still have to follow traditional ways to keep things in order. And if anyone tries to come up with any wit that is labeled as innovative, and they call it, this is a creative way to solve it. Of course, the old guards or the old school thought process people would, unconditionally deny and would still focus on what they have thought has been working for the past decade or even the century. So how would you, as an advocate for creative solutions, could tell to these people, or anyone to that matter, who don't think that what your solutions or your applications of doing what you're advocating actually really matters for moving forward?
Well, the first thing I would just clarify how I define innovation, because I do think we tend to throw around the I word innovation constantly, and sometimes we mean different things, right? And so we tend to we're missing each other. And so I define innovation, excuse me, as an invention converted into value. And that's really important to remember, that an invention is not necessarily an innovation. But how do we go from an invention, which might be a one-off, really cool new way of doing things, to an innovation which is scalable and has value on a social, cultural, and financial dimension? That conversion factor is creativity. And that's why I consistently say the creativity is the engine for innovation. So for naysayers, I just want them to understand that you'll never innovate until you invest the time and space to build a creative capacity in yourself and for your organization. And for on an organizational level, it means that you may need to try new ways to recruit. You may need to hire people from totally different backgrounds than you would have never imagined before. You need to incentivize creativity. It's not enough to say, okay, be creative. Where's the budget for it? Where's the time to do it? Where's the people support to actually invest in creativity? So that's one thing. And the other thing, the last thing I would just say for any naysayers is that I am very specific about outlining for people the business ROI of creativity. Creativity is not just this frilly foo-foo add-on, because when we are creative, we necessarily have more inventive thinking. And when we have more inventive thinking, that leads to new business models, which results in new strategic partnerships, which lands us into new revenue streams. That's a business impact. That's a solid bolt line from inventive thinking to revenue. When we are more creative, we do better when we work collaboratively, when we connect with others who don't think quite like us, who have a different lens on the problem, who will ask new questions. So when we collaborate, productivity goes up, efficiencies increase, and when efficiencies go up, costs go down. That's a business impact. And the third example of the business ROI of creativity is that when we're more creative in our work, we have to be customer obsessed. We can't just deliver what makes sense to us, what we like, but what do the people who are buying our stuff, what do they need? What makes sense to them? So when we are customer obsessed, we design and build more human-centered products, services, experiences that increases brand loyalty. Brand loyalty leads to better market share. That's a business impact. So those are just a few ways I try to impress upon any naysayers that creativity is really essential.
No. This is amazing. I think the way you've articulated is easy for those who, whoever's watching, and for those who we feel should watch this. I hope they understand the deep state of how paramount it is to accept that this is one of the best means in overcoming any sort of constraints that you're facing. So do you have any words that you'd like to share to those who struggle to find the means of being creative within their isolated environment? In this case, for people in Southeast Asia who are, especially in Malaysia or Indonesia or Thailand, when language can be a barrier. There is some cultural aspect that like, for example, we're very low context people, so we tend to listen to our family and so forth. So I can only imagine the constraints there are much deeper. But do you have any encouraging words or ways of how people like them could find other means to wiggle their way around? Any words on that?
Yes. One tip, and it might sound counterintuitive, especially during a time of such isolation, but I think one of the reasons why we can go down this horrible rabbit hole of despair is actually not, well, I have this whole framework that actually starts with this idea of humility. When we are more humble, we get better at asking questions. When we can ask better new questions, we can empathize with others, right? And we can come outside of ourselves to understand a situation from another person's perspective. When we go outside of ourselves, especially during this very challenging time, it also helps us to give us a perspective about even how badly it may feel for our personal situation. It could be so much worse. And the empathy hopefully leads to action. And the action ideally, and I'm really talking much more on a global scale or a national scale or on a city neighborhood scale, can lead to equity. So it does require some gazing inward, but not stopping there. So one of the things I really am an advocate for is to pause, to rest, and to take daydream breaks. And it might sound silly, but it actually recharges you because you're allowing your brain to the neural pathways in other regions of your brain to start charging up. And a daydream break looks like this. It could be 90 seconds. It could be 5 minutes. It could be 15 minutes. And it's not meditation, right? Meditation requires a lot more focus, right? You're always drawing yourself back to whatever the positive thought is. But no, daydreaming is your prompt is the clouds drifting by in the sea. In the sky. I'm thinking Malaysia. If you're by the ocean, which would be amazing for me because I'm not by the ocean. I love the ocean. Just sitting by the waves, right? Or seeing an ant crawl on the pavement. And really, it does take you outside of yourself and it relaxes your brain in a way so that you can go back to the work at hand recharged. And also to identify with someone maybe outside of your family who can give you perspective, if it's a chat or a phone call once a week, where you can do a playful game, really maybe playing with those 3 eyes and posing audacious questions. Maybe you challenge each other to who can ask the most audacious, craziest what if question, and then play with each other about, well, how could we make that happen? What would need to be in place? And that again, this is an example of dreaming of wonder, which helps us to get out of ourselves and to see a situation in a totally new light.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think those are great pieces for our people in the community could take in. Time flies when we're having fun, because we're towards the end already of our show. But I want to reiterate to the people who are watching who will tune in. Please follow Natalie Nixon. I've left her Instagram down here below. You can even check out more on her amazing work and even check out her book called The Creativity Leap. I believe this is something where you people out there will just go find out and see if this would be the right book for you to read wherever you are, whether if you're in a lockdown or if you're in sunny Spain. Do check it out. Natalie Nixon, I want to thank you so much for making this show. I'm deeply honored, and you will be one of the. I'll remember this talk show for a very long time because I definitely learned a lot by just talking to you. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, Zikri. It was awesome to meet you, and thank you for having me.
Likewise. We'll be in touch.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye-bye.